and this episode of Raging Golo is brought to you by the National Institute of Midget Tossing, just because they had a little cash to throw around. G'day Internet Land, it's time for the obligatory political episode because, as we all know, the circus is in town. In other words, both parties, in fact all parties in Australian politics, are gearing up for the next federal election. The signs are up, the slogans are out, and the first debate was held very recently. Already it seems that the government is at a distinct advantage, because all anyone ever hears whenever opposition leader Tony Abbott opens his mouth is, blah blah blah, I'm a wanker. Now, it doesn't matter whether he's talking about wasteful insulation policies or spending. All that we're hearing is blah blah blah, I'm a wanker. Which is a shame, because the opposition has a very simple and obvious strategy available to it. They're going to harp on about immigration, which, with its connotations of boat people and whatnot, is never popular. The political execution of Kevin Rudd, when he said he was going to stay the course. In the end, it wasn't really his decision. Don't worry, the guy's still alive, if, in fact, he wasn't a robot to begin with. And they're also going to talk about economic policy, particularly the spending of the Labour government, including things like an education revolution, which hasn't showed up, super fast broadband, which hasn't showed up either, the insulation debacle, the school halls debacle, which I never really heard that much about, but apparently it was a big deal. But the problem is it may not work. Not only is, like I mentioned, Tony Abbott is a wanker factor. Take my neck of the woods, for example. A poll showed that the Liberal candidate, Ben Zanker, whose name sounds like a rhyming slang for something that doesn't take a lot of imagination, had a support level of 25%. Which is a problem because even though this guy is so low profile, I've never even heard of him before, you would expect that he would get some support because he is a Liberal candidate. Because that's the way these things work. People who vote Labour tend to vote Labour unless they're really pissed off. People who vote Liberal tend to vote Liberal, even though it's a contradiction and they're the biggest bunch of Conservatives in the country. The point is, their candidates, no matter how well known they are, can expect some level of support based on whichever party they're campaigning for. But if this is a trend and not just an anomaly, they're pretty much fucked. And now it's time for a very special election edition of the Raging Golo Odds On. We're offering 20 to 1 that someone loses an eye on Julia Gillard's nose. 25 to 1 if you pick Tony Abbott, by the way. Speaking of Tony Abbott, 15 to 1 says that he will conduct an entire interview wearing nothing but his Speedos. 30 to 1 says that after that interview, he will be arrested for smuggling wildlife. And we're offering 2 to 1 that the great vanishing man himself, Peter Garrett, will, at some point during an interview, just vanish into thin air. Till next time, remember, doesn't matter who you vote for, they're all politicians, they'll fuck it up eventually. Golo out. Authorised by Raging Golo for the Your Mum Jokes Party Adelaide.